Advertising Judaism, the Jewish Identity Project. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at one specific unit I did with my 12th grade Jewish thought students as a model of project-based learning, but also as a way to explore our own understanding of how to develop identity. And for me, most importantly, is how do we communicate about who we are and about why we believe who we are. Who gets to say this is Judaism and everybody else gets to be the ones disagreeing with that person or that group of people? Okay? And lastly, one of the things we realize, because once you start looking at what does it mean to be Jewish and the essence of Judaism and who defines Judaism, is the fact that it's actually changed and evolved over time. And so the question is, how has Judaism changed? Okay? In what ways has it evolved or devolved or just reoriented itself? In terms of time, okay, we've had generations that passed. Judaism as a organized form of practice is about 2,900 years old, maybe 3,100 years old, according to some people. Place, okay, we've gone from being a community that was solely based in Israel, and then Israel disappeared and it was just Judea, and then it got the diaspora, spread everybody out, and you have Jews in Africa, Asia, Europe, and then the Americas. And once you start thinking about how has Judaism changed through the times of place, is what makes Judaism in America distinct? To know your audience. If you're really going to go out and communicate your audience, before you figure out what it is you're going to communicate and how you're going to communicate it, know actually who your target is. So who are you talking to? Are you talking to a group of teachers? Are you talking to your parents? Are you talking to your peers? And how will you reach them? The hard work is actually beginning to answer their own questions so they can actually be experts. In project-based learning, once you establish the question, what you want to do eventually is become an expert in order to be able to be enough to communicate or create a dialogue with other experts on a field. And so one of the things they had to do is research. But they actually had to come up with something that was published. That wasn't just something thrown up on the web. And the idea with this is if you're becoming an expert, you want your information, your data, to come from other experts. So we started with Sarna for American Judaism. And then they were able to go from there and look at other things as they went to research more ancient stuff. So they had to find a focus. So for one group, they wanted to find out specifically how has ethnic behaviors across time and place impacted someone's notion of Judaism. They had to develop questions, such as why did Judaism change when Europeans came to America in the late 1800s? The process became exciting to them. I want them to have the skill to not only be able to think about Judaism and recite Buber or recite Maimonides, but to be able to actually sit there and have a conversation with somebody about that, to communicate about that. What is it that you would want to communicate? When going beyond the essence, what is the focus? What is it if somebody asks you? So we actually came up with a question of, you've just gone to school in your nice dorm at Barnard or at, is that a Barnard shout out? Nice. At UC Davis, which happens for many of our students now, at Texas, at Madison, and you're rooming with a kid from Kentucky who's never met a Jew. And their entire knowledge of Judaism might be based off what they saw on television, what they heard about Israel, and other forms of media, or what people talk about in their towns when they hear about a Jew. That's not good. No, it wasn't. It might have been this. And so we had to think about, for that person, now you're not communicating, you're communicating, what's your message to that person? Okay? What medium are you going to use? How are you going to get to communicate to them? Okay? And what structure and style? So the group decided that videos were the way to go. Create a 4-minute advertisement video, not a song, not a little radio piece, not a print ad, but they wanted to use video to do this. They actually had to go out and collect images, music, video clips. They had to go shoot video. So they had to learn camera work. They had to learn this. They had to learn how to edit. And what was fascinating is groups that succeeded are the ones that did things within their means. If they knew how to edit photos, they did a montage, and they did it really well. Groups that knew how to do video editing did a really good job. And the ones that kept within their skill sets did really well. They had to make tough choices. They couldn't go overboard. And so just for those of us so we can see how this process, they had to turn in 3 assignments. We actually invited parents to the room to be our panel, and being this is LA, we had many parents actually coming from Hollywood and the advertising world that evaluated their work and gave them feedback, and they went back and revised it based on the feedback. They had to defend why this was the most important message to communicate. They had to provide the research fully cited, because when they returned to the research the first time, it got a lot of comments and feedback from me. And they also had to show job descriptions. When you're working, as many of you know, when you do group work and collaborative work, oftentimes several members of the group take on more responsibility than others. We really wanted to make sure ahead of time each member of the group had job descriptions. It didn't work. It still happened. I'm working on that one. The freedom that Americans provided with in 1776, as they reference in their song, gave them the opportunity to choose how they were going to engage with religion, which Jews in Europe and other countries prior-wise, in time and place, didn't have. And it made it different. It started breaking things down. And their biggest thing that they wanted to talk about, as seen in the film, is the way that we can see all these, but yet somehow find a way to say that we're all part of the same religious conversation. I've actually struggled with this. I timed this the Jewish Identity Project, but as more have I been reading about this issue, and the more as I've been trying to address this, Jewish identity might not be what we're talking about here. This goes beyond Jewish identity. This goes to a notion of Jewish peoplehood. That I'm asking these kids to address not just what makes them feel Jewish, but try to address an understanding of more than just the individual people and their identity, but what connects all the people together. I found like I need to better communicate. The rubric's not enough. I need to better communicate expectations and standards to the students as we go along. I learned from this process. I need to better teach them how to research. I still don't think I taught them well enough how to properly research and synthesize data. The hardest part when you're doing projects like this, and I think this applies to all grades, is giving them an authentic audience. We are not an authentic audience as their teachers. They are so used to presenting to us that they're not, if they know that it's somebody other than us looking at it, they put 10 times more effort. Especially if it's their parents, and even more so if you bring an expert into the room. I brought the director of the BJE in for a presentation last year, and those kids, knowing he was coming in, this is a big time professional, their level of the quality of their work shot up. So we're almost done, but I want to ask you guys about this question I'm struggling with, because I need your perspective. Is Jewish identity versus peoplehood, is this really a question? Are we focusing too much on the question of trying to support this idea of developing individualistic identities within a framework of a Jewish environment? Or is the question now more, especially when you're dealing with, how many of us work in community schools of some type? So in your community schools, how much do you have to develop this notion of peoplehood as well? And not just the individualism, but the notion of community. And even more of a challenge if you're not in a community school and you're not being exposed to everybody else, as these films, how do you still show them that it's not enough to just choose how you want to engage in Judaism as an individual, but there's a larger, complex circle out there that you're interconnected to? And do we need to be promoting peoplehood and identity? Is it either or? Is one an outgoing thing, an incoming thing? Does anybody have any reactions to that?